Welcome back to Streets and Eats. Jim and I have been super busy. School is out. We've been traveling. Not that it matters if school's out for us because we're retired, but it does because the kids are out.
That's
and
right.
Erica's out and my sister is out and the kids are, it's just,
Family's visiting. It's
family's
been busy.
here. Yeah. It's been busy. Fun. At any rate, we're happy to be back. And this is episode 108. 108.
Wow.
That's pretty impressive. I'm proud of us. At any rate, today we're going back to Thailand. We have so much Southeast Asia content that we just can't seem to get it all in. And our trouble has always been not finding content. It's been utilizing the content that we've found. So
we do so much. It's hard to get it all into either type or words, videos.
So just remember on our channels that you can find information on our blogs and our podcasts, our Facebook sites. I mean, we've got it everywhere.
If you want to go there, chances are we've been there and we do have that content somewhere.
We'd love for you to ask questions because that might lead us to where we can go next. Okay, let's get to
Episode 108. Today we are talking about Ayutthaya, Thailand.
Ayutthaya.
A day trip to Ayutthaya from Bangkok.
Yes, we're so excited because it was the second time I've done it, but we'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah. Okay, I get the trivia question.
I know. I'm so excited. I love being quizzed.
I could have asked things specific to Ayutthaya, like how many temples and stupa are there?
And the answer would be a lot.
Or a specific number.
I know.
I actually could never actually find that number. It said in the tens. So 20, 30, 40. I don't know what that means.
In the tens of what? The tens of temples? The tens of stupas? I mean, come on.
Okay, well, so I went a little bit broader and I thought, well, let's make this interesting. And in a way, it does definitely apply because, well, we'll see.
Because we'll see.
So we all know that there are lots of really quirky and interesting laws around the world, like no chewing gum in Singapore or in public, or you can't feed the pigeons in Venice, Italy.
I did not know that.
It's true. Now, will they arrest you immediately for that? Probably not. They might for the chewing gum in Singapore. They're pretty serious about that one.
They mean it.
But eventually you would get a fine if you kept doing it when they told you to stop feeding the pigeons.
So I'm guessing with this long-winded beginning that it's something to do with quirky laws that I'll have no clue about.
Quirky laws in, Thailand. Well, so there is an important law. You can call it quirky, but I think to the Thai people, it's very important and it's a matter of respect. But to the rest of the world, it might seem a little bit quirky and strange. And it deals with their
king
money.
Oh, their money.
Yes.
Can't stand on it.
Oh, well, so much for that trivia question. Yes, that's right. You cannot step on the money in Thailand, on the currency.
Oh, okay. That was pretty good, you guys.
Because, like you said, all of the currency has images of the royal family, the king or the queen or somebody. And it's against the law to disrespect the royal family.
Yeah.
And so because in Thai culture, of course, the head is like the supreme everything. You never want to be above the head of a monk or a Buddha
statue or anything
like that.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that means the feet are the opposite. And that's why you always take off your shoes before you enter a building, a temple, or a home or something like that. So the idea of stepping on the royal family is just, no, it is definitely against the law.
You don't do it.
And they probably will pick you up and fine you for that.
Here I have visions of just me the other day. You know how when you have your hands full and you're trying to pay for something, everything tends to go wrong. I was at a parking machine at the hospital, and not only did I drop the ticket that I had to put in the machine, when I bent over to pick it, I dropped all the coins that were in my hand. And then when I picked up the coins, I dropped something else. I mean, it was a comedy of errors. And it was definitely one of those things where one of them was a bill and I'm chasing it down, trying to catch it, trying to step on it to get it. So that just happened to me. Probably if that had just happened to me, I wouldn't have thought about it. But I mean,
Yeah.
What
so
a mess.
if you drop your money and you drop bills in Thailand and it's a windy day, don't chase after it trying to step on it to stop
Either
it.
let it go. It's
Or
probably
grab
not
it.
worth much anyway. Okay, well, I got it right. Boom, without even trying. If I'd thought about it, I wouldn't have got it right.
Probably not. And maybe I worded it a little too specific. Maybe I shouldn't have mentioned the currency and just said, what's a quirky law?
Yeah. Yeah, you made
You'd-
it.
you'd
It
take
seems
it a
like you
little bit
made
longer
it.
to
I
get
don't
there.
know, whatever.
But you did a pretty good job. I definitely will give that one to you.
Thank you.
Let's see if I can't stump you better on the next one.
All right.
Okay, so we're in
so-
Ayutthaya. And first of all,
Was it a little background?
a little background.
Both of us had been to Thailand separately
A couple
before.
of times, right?
Jim had been with the Air Force. Had you been as
Pattaya Beach, not to Bangkok. Well, I've been through Bangkok a couple of times flying, but not really have enough time to do much. Never spent a night there for sure. So not a whole lot. I've only been there like once or twice on my own.
And then once I met our oldest daughter, Devin, there when she was on university Christmas break and I was on break from school. And Jim and Erica had gone to Hawaii for some medical issues.
Mhm.
And but the whole family didn't go there. So she met me in Thailand, and she and I actually did go to Bangkok and Ayutthaya. So this was my second trip to Ayutthaya. And that first one quite a bit different than the second one.
Yeah.
So
Well, that was a long time ago.
first of all, it was a long time ago. And second of all, I was, I'm gung, and I kind of still am. I mean, I'm a pretty adventurous
You're pretty
traveler.
adventurous. You're pretty gung ho. We
I
to
like-
get going and moving, and but we've definitely slowed down.
Well, but I like doing things independently. I like figuring it out. I like, finding my own transportation. And, I'm reticent to take a tour, which we did this time. But the first time, Devin and I went to the hotel. No, actually, I don't think we did get it from the hotel. I think we just had a tuk-tuk driver in Bangkok. And, the thing about tuk-tuk drivers or nowadays Grab
different.
drivers
It's
or
different than it
whatever.
was 30 years ago, for
Well,
sure.
it's different. But my point is, when you have those kinds of drivers who take you around, they're always looking to do something off-piste, off-ticket, because they're usually working for someone and they have to pay that person whatever, or they get paid from that person. I'm not sure all the schemes, but a lot of those drivers will happily do a private drive for you.
For sure.
And we've utilized that trick a few times. Even when we were in Vietnam last, we used that trick a couple of times.
Yeah.
So the first time when I was in Thailand with Dev, we hired a tuk-tuk driver. We were talking to him. He asked us if we wanted a private driver for one of the days we were there. And we're like, yeah, we do.
Yeah, sure.
And we wanted to go to Ayutthaya. And it turned out great because I'm a teacher. Devin was going to school for being a speech pathologist. So school, education, it's kind of our thing. And he came from a family of teachers as well. And on this private tour to Ayutthaya, we got the bonus of going to a Thai school where his mother was a teacher. We went to his aunt's little cafe where she made a special pad thai just for us in this beautiful little bamboo hut. It was a very cool experience. However, the Ayutthaya part maybe wasn't quite as comprehensive
Right.
as, of course, the
it
part with
wasn't
the...
actually a private tour.
No, and I didn't know what I was supposed to see when I got to Ayutthaya. Back then,
Yeah,
this is
guidebooks.
pre-internet, by the way. Back then, we had guidebooks, and it says, go to Ayutthaya.
Or it might
So
have
I did go to
go to
Ayutthaya.
this Wat or go to that Wat, but it's
It
not
didn't
extensive.
have much. It didn't have much.
Right.
So basically, in my mind, I would go there, and it would be like this
Amazing
complex,
area.
this
You'd see
one
everything.
complex, and you would see it all, and boom, you're done.
It didn't work
Well, the
out.
driver doesn't know any different either. He doesn't care.
Yeah. He
So
might
basically,
care, but he doesn't know.
yeah. So
not
he
a
took us
guide.
to Ayutthaya. He did everything that we asked him to do. He did plus more. So he was a fantastic driver, and it cost us next to nothing to hire him. But we really didn't get to see much of
Yeah.
Ayutthaya. I didn't even going back this time. Who had been there before, among the three people, was probably the most shocked and the most awestruck because my first experience had been.
You'd seen some stuff, but not really.
And I didn't really know that it was so much bigger than it was. So that was kind of cool for me,
actually. So it says a little bit something about, the planning and what you're going to do and how you're going to get there type thing.
Yeah, but
and
on the other hand,
other options too.
Nowadays you have so many more resources than you did back when I first did it.
Yeah. Well, we should probably go back a little bit because some of those resources include podcasts.
Yeah, that's right.
And maybe people are actually wondering still what exactly is Ayutthaya and why should you go there? So let's fill them in a little bit. Ayutthaya was the original capital, the royal capital.
Not the original, the second capital.
Oh, the second capital, sorry.
Of Siam.
Which eventually became Thailand. So you
after
think of
Sukhothai. Sukhothai is another place that you should go.
Okay, we haven't been there yet.
We have not been there. So golly gee, got to go to Thailand again.
So anyway, Ayutthaya was the capital of Siam, like between the 1300s and the mid to late 1700s. Thriving, bustling metropolis of its day.
Quite rich.
Right along the river. So trade and all that stuff, like a global trade center, or at least a regional trade center for that part of Asia. Quite rich. But always at war with the Burmese. Which is right there. Which is right next door. Finally their downfall. The Burmese army finally was able to overtake, conquer,
and burn it down,
and raze the city completely.
Our guy told us the city Ayutthaya burned for 30 days on that final.
And of course, they looted and everything else that armies do.
Well, and they desecrated the religious symbols, which happens all over the world. It's sad when it happens, obviously, but you see a lot of
defacing, especially.
You see a lot of headless. You see a lot of there's no arms and things like that because
on the statues.
Because they wanted to topple the empire, and they wanted to make sure that whoever was worshiping these gods and this way of thinking that was the end of that.
Right.
So that's
and
how
they
you
have
do
to
it.
bend to their will now.
And they have to bend to their will. Yeah.
So I don't think that they actually bent to the will of the Burmese. They just moved further away from them and rebuilt the capital in modern day Bangkok. But luckily, even though they did go in and loot a lot of the treasure and deface a lot of the statues and toppled the heads and whatnot, the temples themselves were too big, too massive. Most of those were left alone. Now they weathered, of course. They had to withstand the throes of time, so to speak.
Well, and there was
and you see that today.
Erosion and what have you.
But most of the large buildings from the city, the royal palace, the temples, the religious sites, are still there, and that's what you're going to see. All those sites. In fact,
and there's a lot of them. There's many, 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 many. And our Thai is abominable as far as pronunciation. So we are not going to. We're not going to name a whole lot of the watts that you get there. There are when you arrive, you will have. There's a plethora of information. There's maps and there's all kinds of things that can tell you the different names of the various watts. And what they were used for, or palace rooms, or which king was interred here, which king was interred there. All very interesting information. But in all fairness, that's the kind of information I have a hard time retaining.
Yeah.
Like I find it interesting while I'm there. I think it's rich, but what I really, really take from those types of histories are like a good story. Like, I mean, the battle story with the Burmese was a fascinating story. And I can remember probably that much better than I can remember which king was interred in which what. But does that make it any less of an experience? No, because I really enjoy going to the Watts and you can see the splendor. I mean, this is hundreds of years old and it's still huge and impressive.
It's incredible.
You can imagine that during its heyday, that it would be even that much better.
And the architecture is just beautiful.
It's
still
stunning.
Today. Maybe even more so as ruins. It's more romantic, perhaps.
Yeah, that's true.
And I said temples, but it's like temples, reliquaries,
like
monasteries,
palaces and palace
everything.
rooms, and
So it's all there, and it's all kind of grouped together in one UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Ayutthaya Historical Park.
Even though there's
more than what's inside the park.
Lots of places to go.
That's where you're going to find the majority of it, and that's where you're going to spend most of your time on a visit, I think. And yeah, the names and the dates and things like that, those are all things that you can easily find online or in a guidebook. But how to get there and the experience of getting there and doing the things that you do when you're there, that's a different story. So that's kind of where we're
and
at.
who you read into and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I'd like to talk a little bit about it because I've already brought it up somewhat, is how to go to Ayutthaya, because it is not real close to Bangkok. I think it's 60 or 80 miles away, which is a fair distance. I mean, you have to either take a train or take a tour or find your way there on your own, whether you want to rent a motorbike or however you want to do that. But it's not easy. It really isn't.
No, we found that public transportation in general, in Bangkok especially,
It's challenging.
was a little bit challenging. And we are pretty good travelers. I mean, we've traveled to many cities around the world, and we use public transportation all over the place. And we were successful at it in Bangkok. But the tools that we normally use didn't really work.
We were successful because we know when it gets to a certain point that, okay, it's okay to take a taxi.
Yeah, that's true. And a smile goes a long way. Like, we got on one bus that was supposed to go to a stop that we were expecting to go to based on its number and where we got picked up and everything else.
According to the app online.
But with some smiles and some talking with the people on board, and we found out quickly, no, it doesn't go there. But
and
the
they
bus
started
driver
to panic, and they were going to drop us off right there so they wouldn't take us further. But then the bus driver's like,
I can go a little bit off the route, and I can drop you, and you'll be fairly close. And then, so, I mean, it worked out.
It worked out really
But
fun.
generally speaking, the bus systems, we didn't have a lot of luck with. Of course, the trams and the SkyTrain and all that stuff, that's very easy. And that was very good.
But the problem is it doesn't go that
No, and
many
Bangkok
places.
is a huge, sprawling city.
Yeah, there's a lot to do.
So at some point, you can't just rely on the train system.
So to take that a step further and try and go outside the city,
right?
You really have to think about it. There is a train that goes from Bangkok to Ayutthaya. So you certainly can do that. And when I went to Ayutthaya the first time, there wasn't much of a city around the World Heritage Site. There were some things, and a little bit further out, there was more of a metropolis. But
yeah, there's more infrastructure now.
But there's a lot more infrastructure now than there was then. So there are hotels and there are Airbnbs and there are places to stay, which did not exist the first time I went. And probably now that I've been there this time around, if I were to go back, I would do it that way. But it also is kind of one of those places that if you've been once, I mean, you've done it.
You may not need to go again.
I've gone twice, but it was over a couple of decades. So, that's different.
And you can also take a bus or a minibus, like a public bus. And that's going to be the cheapest option for sure. And it'll get you there about 90 minutes to 2 hours. You'll be there. But the thing is, with the bus and the train, it's going to just take you to Ayutthaya, the village, the city outside the ruins.
And you still have to figure out a way to get around.
The modern day city. And then from there, you still have to figure, you're going to hire somebody to take you a tuk-tuk or a taxi, maybe rent a bicycle. I'm not sure. It's very hot. I don't think I would choose that option.
Well,
but you're still going to have to get around to the sites because
they're
spread
sprawling.
out.
Yeah, they're spread out.
So you have to take that into account if that's the route you decide to go.
So what we did this time around is we took a tour. And as I prefaced it earlier on, we're not big on day tours,
No.
day bus tours, but sometimes I feel it is the best option. In this case, maybe maybe I was thinking of my first experience, and that's why I lent so heavily towards it without really looking into it too much. But I don't know. I mean, I think it's a 50-50 on it.
Well, also timing comes into play.
Yeah, timing.
And like we had to get from our hotel to either the train station or the bus station or to where the tour was going to pick us up. And if you play your cards right, your hotel can set up a tour. You can find a tour online. There's lots of good places out there, lots of good sources for tours. And you can find one that'll pick you up from your hotel, which is what we did. It picked us up at our hotel and brought us to
A
the
meeting point.
And we made sure that we were not on a tour that was like a big 50-person, 60-person bus.
Yeah, I think
this was a very small mini bus.
16 to 20 people
at the most. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even think it was that many.
But there are always, pros and cons to taking a tour. And even on this tour, okay, so it was easy getting there. It was air conditioned. These are two very nice things.
They are.
They bought the tickets for us, which I mean, in today's world, if you're an English speaker, you're pretty safe. I mean, I don't really think you need someone to buy tickets for you. But they did. And yes, that can be a stress for some people. And especially with something like this where you don't really know all the different watts to go to and all the different sites.
And options for tickets, because there were options for tickets here too. But
the downside was, first of all, you're on a timeline.
Someone else's timeline.
You're on someone else's timeline. You feel obligated to follow the guide around, which I'm also not very good at that. I want to take photos, and I don't want to wait until everybody disperses because I have that many more people in my photos. So I tend to take photos while the guy is talking, and if I'm missing information, guess what? I can find it online.
Right.
And then I tend to get a little bit better photos that way, I think. But I also miss the information, pros and cons. The thing I really disliked about this tour, the biggest
problem.
Yuck.
I agree.
Was the lunch.
Yeah.
Because what these big, huge tours, and even though this wasn't even a huge one, what tours tend to do is they're making a deal with the restaurant or whatever to provide these meals, and they're never that great.
No.
And I'm going to tell you, it was the worst meal we had in Thailand.
And we're talking Thailand. It's hard to find bad food in Thailand.
It really is.
But it really was not very good.
It was horrible. And I would have much rather not had lunch included and gone and found my own. And maybe I still would have had bad food. I mean, that's always a possibility. But I think it would have been less of a possibility.
And you would have chosen it.
And it would have been my choice instead of, Anyway.
Yeah. And I agree. Like when you get to a site and you're with a guide and they go from point A to point B to point C, point D, and each time they stop and they talk for 10 minutes, I can't handle that.
It's just standing in line.
But in this case, I thought the tour guide did pretty good. We would get to a site, we would have a small talk at the site about its significance, its importance, its history, and then we were free to wander around the site and then just meet back up at a certain time. So I thought they did that really well on this particular tour. The food, I think they did pretty badly. As far as getting us to the different sites and everything and getting us in, we pretty much got right into each site without having to wait for other tours or anything like that. So whether they timed it correctly or we just got lucky, I don't know. But it worked out pretty good.
I also want to mention that they didn't want us to leave the group. So when we went to lunch, they kind of gave us a little ultimatum. And there was this really cool Wat right across the street from where we were eating lunch. And I was going there, period. But the guide had, as we were disembarking the bus, he says, now everybody stay for lunch. Stay right here. Don't go wandering. It's a pretty area, but there are wild dogs and they've been known to bite people.
Recently.
Well, I doubt it because what I doubt is that those dogs are still there if that actually happened. And I think it was kind of a scare tactic to keep us close, which it did keep us closer than we may have wandered.
Yeah.
Because
there was quite a bit around that little area, and it would have been easy to wander off and
lose track of
time with all the different things to see in the area.
Yeah. But anyway, I don't know. I'm just not a big person for bus tours, so I tend to.
Yeah. It's hard for us when we're in a situation where that does become the best option because it's never our first choice.
Never.
But sometimes it is a good choice, and it just worked out this time too, especially if time is a problem. We didn't have a lot of extra time. If we had more days, that we were just kind of hanging out around Bangkok, we could have easily taken the train, found accommodations in the Ayutthaya area,
and taken a couple of days and done all the what's that we wanted to do on our own.
gotten like have the hotel in Ayutthaya, or just wandering down the street. I'm sure you could find someone who would take you to the sites and know all about them.
Yeah.
That way. Because if you hire your driver from Bangkok, it's not expensive to hire someone for the day. That's really not a bad option. But they're not
they
going to
don't
know anything about
Ayutthaya.
the
That's right.
temples and the Wats.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so taking
can
a day
also-
tour
you can
is
also-
not a bad idea, but it's maybe a better idea if you really like the convenience of it. But just know you're not always getting the absolute best experience by doing so.
Yeah. I was going to say, you can also take a boat tour from Bangkok.
A boat tour or just a boat to get there?
A boat tour
Oh.
to Ayutthaya. And it's like a 3-hour journey, but you're on the river, you're in this boat, and then, of course, they give you the tour when you get there. I don't know how much that costs, but I mean, that's an option.
It's an option.
And
Sounds
it
somewhat
could be
romantic.
A cool way to do it.
I don't know. Anyway, so there are lots of options. It is probably one of the most visited sites in all of Thailand.
Yeah.
It is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, as we mentioned. So there are lots of options on how to get there. I say, depending on your time and your interest, you have to decide whether you want to try and do it independently, which I think is very doable, or do it as a tour. Now, once you get to the Watts, we were on a tour, as we said.
Mhm.
So we definitely had someone telling us about the history. You know, it started at this time, it ended at this time. This is all stuff you can get online. What I loved about it was just wandering, and it was so expansive. There were so many things to see. There was beautiful flowers and beautiful trees, even pecan trees we saw
Yeah.
for the first
Which
time
I've
ever.
never seen.
Beautiful Watts to wander into. Modern day Watts, which are, buildings, and the ancient Watts as well.
The ruins.
We spent all day there, 4 hours probably.
Easily.
And I think if we had done it independently, we could have easily spent 2 days there
Yeah.
wandering around the Watts.
Well, we only went to 4 of the main Watts, and there were definitely
Something in the tents,
others to see for sure.
for sure.
Yeah.
So
you could have done 4 one day and then 4 the next day. That sort of thing. But we went to the important ones, of course. And yeah, I agree. Going there and have someone tell you about this specific reliquary tower, for instance, and who's in it and who's interred there and that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. But like you said, you can find that information. You don't need someone to tell you while you're standing there in one place, when you could be wandering around and looking at all the interesting, the stuff that you find in archaeological parks, different pieces of statues that have been collected over in this area because they were important finds, but not so important that they're going to go to a museum. But they also don't want to take them off the site, so they keep them in one little area. So you might see a section of statue torsos that are all stacked up in one area, or piles of the different types of bricks with the branding on them and things like that.
just really cool things.
Just
And
wandering around is just the way.
just exploring
way to do
and
it.
wandering and meandering and just sort of taking in the atmosphere. And yes, there were a lot of tourists there, but I wouldn't say it was overrun. There were many, many times when I wanted to take a photo and I just had to wait, I don't know, a few seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds till someone actually wandered out of my shot. I think I got tons of shots without people
No
in
people.
them. And then again, there's the people watching is fun too, because there's people from all over the world. The people were friendly. It was a good day. It was a good day trip. It was a really nice day trip. It's a day trip that every single person who goes to Bangkok should
be
do in one form or another. It's their history. It's things that they're proud of.
Beautiful architecture.
It's architectural. It's just gorgeous parks. The food wasn't that good.
It's like parklands with amazing archaeological features.
Yeah. Well worth it. I loved it.
And I'm sure there is good food there somewhere.
Mhm.
We just didn't find it.
And like I said, nowadays you can stay in Ayutthaya and I'm sure there's good food that's outside the park environs that are more in the city, because then you're basically just in Thailand. You're not in a
sure.
You're not in a
You're not in
tourist
a
trap.
tourist area.
So, and I say tourist trap because it is probably such, every time you have something that's that important in any culture, as much as we want to revere it, and I do, it also has that side to it that it's overdone, and there's people there just to take advantage of tourists, and that's unfortunate.
A level of capitalizing on what they have.
Always, and we're guilty of that in the United States as well. So we're not immune for any stretch of the imagination, but I think that this one is well worth it. And I think if you're planning a trip to Thailand, then at the very least you want to make a day trip.
At least a day trip to Ayutthaya.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.